Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Single No More Online Summit. We are here to give you the tools to feel confident that you can meet and keep your Mr. Right this year. And again, I've said it before, but we think feel confident because we know and I know that finding love is in your power. You have much more control over it than you think. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. The one other thing I love about this is that I feel like the tools that we're teaching you to meet your Mr. Right are actually going to help you through your lifetime, especially the angle that I'm coming from in terms of having it come within you and really doing that loving yourself, stages and practices and things like that. So not only is it going to help you find Mr. Right, these are, skills for a lifetime. And I can definitely attest to that. So if you have any questions, just ask me. My guest today, I'm so excited, is Scott Milnes, founder of the Great Relationship Academy. And he is on a mission to help people find, grow, and keep real love that they've always wanted. I mean, what could be better? And this passion was born out of a broken heart, how he became whole, and then found the real love that he'd always heard about, which I'm sure we've all heard about. We all want that. And I love it how he says you could have everything the world has to offer, but if you're not in a healthy relationship, you're going to feel that void. And he's going to get into all this good stuff for you as well. He also said that finding, growing, and keeping real and lasting love takes wisdom and skill. And this is probably not what we were taught at home or school. So, but the beauty is it is something we can be taught, and that's exactly what this summit is for. And we are so excited to get into it today. Hello, Scott. Welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I would love for you to share just a little bit of your journey, because I feel like that's where your strength comes from, is having gone through so much yourself, especially in the love area like we all have. So
Yeah.
Share a little bit of your journey. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to share. I'll kind of give you the Cliff Notes version today, but yeah, I was married and divorced at 29, and when that happened, I was completely blindsided by it. Didn't see it coming by any degree, and I had no idea whatsoever how to handle that confusing and challenging chapter of life. And so, back then, 29 years old, I embarked on the only type of divorce recovery I'd ever heard of, and that was drink a bunch of alcohol, spend a bunch of money I didn't have, and chase a bunch of inappropriate women that I wouldn't even known what to do with had I caught them.
Numb the pain, right? Numb the pain.
Numb the pain, full flight from reality. But the thing is, I wasn't conscious of any of it. I was just like, oh my gosh, I went through this divorce. I want to replace what I've lost. So I'm frantically trying to get into a new relationship, and then, partying on the weekends. And then the other layer, if I don't like the way I feel in the moment, well, I'm going to go buy something to alter my state. And I'm like, hey, look at me. I bought a new car. And yeah, I was definitely circling the drain pretty quick. Fast forward about 8 years after my divorce, I just went through a super gnarly breakup, and that breakup was exponentially more painful than my divorce for a variety of reasons. And that was it. About 5 weeks after that breakup, I literally hit bottom. That was definitely one of the deepest and darkest valleys of my life. And part of the narrative that went through my mind at that time was, I'm like, holy shit, dude, like here you are, you're at that point I was 37. But I'm like, man, you're 37. Like, you have this string of failed relationships in your wake. You have a 100% failure rate at love. You clearly have no clue what you're doing. Something, i.e. everything, needs to change. And in that moment, I was just given this powerful gift of a spiritual awakening, and I embarked on this vision quest to figure it out. From there, went back to school, took every class, read every book, attended every workshop, seminar, and sermon that I could find that would illuminate, what is healthy love? What is it not? How do I tell the difference? And as the months and weeks and years evolved, so did the software program in my mind for how I chose relationships, the picker that we often so talk about. And then also, once I chose a relationship, how do I show up in it? How do I perform and act and behave and think and feel and respond, how do I operate once I'm in a relationship?
Mm.
And that's something, students that come through my program and learn my method, they get really good at choosing and operating. They choose with wisdom and clarity, which is often something that they're not used to. And then once they get into a relationship, they operate from like I said, it's that software program has been rewritten. It's
Mm.
been debugged, and any viruses have been removed. And now they're just operating from a much higher level.
That's great.
And then I'll bring my story in with a quick landing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was on that spiritual journey. The first 3 years was just literally a season of singlehood, sobriety, and celibacy.
Mhm.
Because I knew instinctively that I was only capable of another broken relationship. So I wanted to stay out of the dating pool long enough to fully heal and reset the button
Mm.
on how I do relationships. Not only did I need to fully heal and recover from my divorce that was 8 years ago, I
Mm.
really had to do a lot of work on healing and recovering from all of the bad breakups and the false starts and all of my failed relationships, so I
Mm.
could fully learn, uh, because I'm the common denominator in all my relationships. I better figure out my piece immediately.
Yeah.
So, about 3 years into my journey, after much prayer and meditation, I decided that it was time to re-enter the dating pool. And yeah, within pretty darn short order, I'd say maybe 8 weeks of dating, I met my now wife,
Mhm.
and I was able to really recognize her. And I want to share that with your audience. Is
Mm.
part of that rewiring is I got really clear on my type
Mm.
and how my historical type was absolutely not working for me, but that if I if I adopted a new blueprint like my spiritual type, I'd be able to recognize her. And yeah, when I met my wife, I did. I saw her with spiritual eyes, and I fell in love with her. And wow, we've been together for 11 years and married for almost 9.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
yeah, it's for a guy like me, with the history that I have,
Mm.
it was nothing shy of a miracle,
Mm.
and it was also a byproduct of a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
um, preparing and equipping myself to be ready when I did meet her.
I love that. I love that. Like you do admit to all that hard work that you had to do. So yes, I'm sure it feels like a miracle because you got there and you probably at one point didn't think you would, but you did. But that's
Hmm.
because you put in the hard work. I love hearing you say something had to change. I definitely say the same thing for me. I was just tired of having that repeating pattern of something not working
Hmm.
and telling myself that I wasn't going to have the fairy tale that I wanted or that I dreamed of, but yet didn't really believe might happen. So I love that. I love that you say that, and your story is incredible. So it's an inspiration to everyone. I think
Thank you.
it just reminds me that anyone can just decide. You know, if you decide and you put the effort in, and you actually have the ability to say, "Hey, I might be the common denominator here."
Yeah,
That's
it's
where some real improvement can be done.
yeah, that truth is unavoidable. I love the quote from Lauryn Hill from the Fugees. She says, "How you gonna win if you ain't right within?"
I love
And
it.
yeah, it's solid gold. And
It
it's
is
the truth.
good.
It's like, all of our human relationships, it starts with us. The lens through which we view them,
Yeah.
all of our previous hurts and habits and hangups, all that jazz. It's how we show up. It all starts with us.
Mm. I love,
Whether
yeah, I love what you said about how you, like you said, you choose, but also how you show up in a relationship. And obviously, through my journey, I love that you have differentiated that those are two very different skills in a way. There is the choosing side, and then there's definitely you still got to show up, and it's
yeah, I did a Facebook Live the other day about this very topic, and it just quite simply I just shared, like, hey, there's two primary ways people blow it in relationships. They either blow it in the selection process, like they don't know what to look for and what to run from.
mm-hmm.
They fall in love with the exterior, with the surface of another human,
Or
and so they blow it in the selection phase. um and you and I both know, if you if you miss that mark,
yeah,
you're gonna have a pretty tough road.
yeah,
um And then the other way people blow it is kind of the nurturance, like how they care for and how they nurture a relationship. And the distinction I made was, you, myself, we've all got friends like what I'm about to describe, and that is
Mm.
friends or associates where if you gave them Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, well, actually, it wouldn't be Mrs. Right because we're not passing off married people to single people.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
But if we gave them the quote unquote ideal match for them,
yeah.
and we circumvented the selection process, like we've handled that for them, they
Mm-hmm.
would still find a way to blow it
Yes.
because they haven't done the inner work
Mm-hmm.
to care for and nurture a healthy relationship to completion.
Mm, it's so true. And I love what you said about your story when you said you hit 37 and you were like, come on, I should have it all together. I should, like, what am I not getting? And that's what I think is fascinating about our lives too, is that, of course, there's some people getting married at 20. There's some people getting married later in life. There's a lot of people getting married at different
Mhm.
times of life. And that makes sense to me. Once I realized how complicated I was, I thought I was super like not complicated. And then I went, okay, nope, I get it. I had a lot to unpack. So I clearly can see why it might have taken me longer. But we all do have this, I think, belief that we've been told that we should just get it, or we should just know, or
Oh
it's
yeah.
easy, right?
Well, we've been sold that falsehood, from childhood,
Yeah.
either in movies, television, books, magazines, whatever. And now it's even more prolific because you've got social media and Instagram and all the others, where we're sold this false fantasy that, like, oh well, if you're alive and you're breathing, well then surely you can just manifest a healthy partnership like with zero training or effort.
Right.
And it's like, that's, come on, it's no, it's that would be like you and I saying, like, oh well, if you're living and breathing, well surely you can create and manifest a billion-dollar corporation like
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody ever thinks that.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? Nobody ever is like that delusional. But I think we all at some point have just been like, why am I not getting this? I should get this.
yeah.
And I think we need to give ourselves a lot of grace and patience and
Mm-hmm.
and inner self-love and kindness to know, you know what? Um, we weren't taught this stuff in school. We
Mm-hmm.
It probably wasn't a topic of daily conversation in our family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it's just it's
I
it's
know.
it's okay that you're not nailing it right out of the gate.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. Why I'm trying to just think as you're talking, why are we sold this story that it's so easy? Why, you got to work to go to college, you got to work to get a job, you got to work at school, you got to work at everything else, but everyone just almost like, and again, I'm just totally doing this off the cuff as we're
Yeah.
talking, but it's just fascinating to me, like what is the beauty in making it seem like this is so easy?
Well, okay, let's touch on that for a second. And you're absolutely right. It's like there's all these other verticals of life where we are taught the reality that if you
Right.
want the result, you got to get the skills.
Mhm.
Period. End of discussion. But
Mhm.
I think there is this, and maybe this is rooted in biology at some level. But
Mhm.
you think about it: if you put two people who are physically attracted to each other, well, just stand back. It like
It
they're gonna,
happens.
yeah, the clothes are gonna fly off. They're gonna, it's
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
a sexual connection that
True.
is
Mhm.
very biological, and it's
Mhm.
highly automatic,
Right.
and it requires no skill and no effort.
Mm.
It's like, hey, you're hot. Let's let's make this happen.
Right.
um, but when it comes to building what I call a legacy marriage,
Mm.
and again, this when students come through and learn these methods,
Mm.
um, they understand that, like, building building a legacy marriage, and let me define that briefly, is a marriage that is really a beacon of hope and faith and encouragement to all those who witness it.
Mm.
um Man, that you got to nail the selection process, and you
Mm.
have to know, okay, uh relationships are easy when everything's great, but how do we manage the downtimes?
Mm.
How do we handle the twists and turns and the inevitable storms that
Mm.
are on the horizon in everyone's life? How do we navigate those storms when they hit?
Mm.
That's a skill.
Yeah.
So back to, like, full circle, my point is, attraction is biological, sex is physical, but creating, like co-creating with intention, a legacy marriage where you have healthy, well-adjusted children,
Mm.
and you're able to do so much more together as a unit, than you ever could independently,
Mm.
man, that's a skill.
Yeah, I see it.
Great. Yeah.
I see how the benefit of a healthy couple can then obviously, ideally, lead to healthy, well-adjusted kids, and the benefit of that, right? And it not only benefits that unit, but the people around them. And I think that's definitely almost probably my underlying mission, is to really help start these healthy relationships from the start, like you're saying, the
Mhm.
selection process and the relationship, so we can all be looking at relationships as a good thing and a supportive thing, not an easy thing, not so totally simple, but something that we, I think, have been sold and do want to achieve,
Yeah.
without looking at it more so from well, we're just, there's just so much divorce out there. Well, that maybe
Yeah.
just that as that's those two people, and if they didn't have the skills to, like you said, weather the storm, work through arguments or those things. I mean, I feel like as I've gone through this longest relationship that I'm in, and luckily it's led to an engagement based on a lot of work, I can see how human relationships is one of the most interesting and hardest things to do. It involves someone else, whereas
Yeah.
everything else you can do on your own, and that's really like,
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it, like we are all imperfect human beings,
mm,
every single one of us,
yeah.
and we are in the process of relationship. We are partnering with another equally, or perhaps more so, imperfect human being. So I think we need to be really careful with our expectations. We want to have standards.
Mhm,
We want to have boundaries. We want all that stuff,
mhm,
but we just need to. In my life, with my students, I'm always reminding them, like, hey, grace, patience, nurturance, like we're all imperfect. Like, let's work through our imperfections. I do want to touch on this briefly, if I may, and that is, early in my journey, I was invited to co-lead one of the largest divorce recovery ministries in the U.S. and ended up actually leading that program for almost the better part of 5 years. But my point is, in sharing that, is I would hear stories, and then, well, even in my own practice within the academy, I would hear these stories, and I got really good at asking questions. And what I'm trying to explain, what I discovered was many of these divorces were doomed from the beginning.
mhm,
And so I ended up coining this term, and I call it a divorce under construction. And it's like the way they met, the way they engaged in their courtship, the way they handled pace and acceleration, and all the things they missed because they were going too fast and they didn't know what to look for. I'm like,
mhm.
they're telling me their story, and I'm like, well, no shit. Like, of course you're having problems. Like, this is not a mystery. And I said that with all love,
Of course, yeah.
in all grace, but I'm just like, and some people really love the tough love. And I
Mhm.
always ask permission before I give it.
Love as well. So yeah.
But I'm just like, guys, like, this is not a mystery. You think it's a mystery and you're surprised by it. But this is not an accident. Like,
Right,
now
right.
we do the work. You probably have more work to do than you guessed,
Mhm.
because, well, you haven't done any work this whole time. Um,
That's
it's it's
fascinating. I
it's a
love
trip.
that. Yeah, that's super interesting. But to me, when I hear that, as someone who's single, I go, oh, okay, so I can just, with the right skills, I can choose the right person from the beginning and set myself on the right trajectory. And
100%.
also, by you saying it's not a mystery, it's almost, to me, sounds, that's a good thing, because you're not going, ooh, man, I don't really know why this went wrong, because then there's really nothing, you almost don't know how to approach it differently the next time. But if it's so, not obvious, but it's like, if you can tell, then it's like, great, this is just what we need to adjust. This is what we need to work on.
Hmm.
You're going to be set. And I would feel quite comfortable with that. It's almost like you don't want to go to the doctor and they go, I've never seen this before. That's never good.
You're right. Yeah. In all
But if
my
someone
years of
goes, oh, I
medicine.
know why you're doing it. I'm like, great. What do I need to do? Like,
Mhm.
help me.
Yeah, it's a trip. And, like, like I said, my wife and I, we, been married almost 9 years at this point. And
Yeah.
one thing that I almost have to pinch myself around is it just keeps getting better
Mm,
every year. We just become more in sync and more attuned, and just more capable
mm,
of like amplifying the great times. Like, the great times are even better. And then when we hit a snag or a wrinkle or a bump in the road,
yeah.
it's almost like our suspension has been upgraded to where we don't feel it as much. It's like
Interesting.
we understand the terrain. We're like, oh, well, we've seen this before. We're just going to turn the truck just a little bit to the left. We're going to avoid that hole. Like we're just, it's a refining process, and it's a skill you learn over time. But one thing I'm so grateful for with her is I always remind myself that I chose wisely with her. Like we, I don't know, we're just such a healthy team, and it's the best relationship I've ever had in my life. Just beyond grateful.
I love it. And I love that you said that statement about how it gets better over time. And that's what I think from someone who might be at a single stage, it's hard to believe that, or they feel like they need to be feeling something so instantly. And yeah, she'll have, with the right skills to know who to seek, it's only going to get better. And I think that's a really exciting thing. I also want to, so let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
But I want to, we haven't spoken about it a lot on this summit, and you are, like you said, the fact that you're doing the divorce recovery, leading that, you are very passionate about making sure that when someone is dating, that they're ready. And whether it coming from a divorce or a breakup, which I'm sure we've all had at some stage, unless you're just starting, you're very passionate about making sure that people have healed from that. So can you tell us a little bit more about why is that so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So gosh, where to start? So I think like this was all kind of born out of my own journey. So, after I had my spiritual awakening back in '06 and embarked on that season of singlehood and celibacy and sobriety, I just started asking a lot of deeper questions like, okay, well, what are my relational patterns? Like where, and let me pause there for a second. One piece of awareness that I came to was I had never stopped and remained intentionally single long enough to gain the critical clarity from all of those relational woundings. I mean, really even going back as far as to, like my high school girlfriend and how that kind of imploded. And then she started dating some guy immediately thereafter, and kind of that rejection and abandonment, and how all of these relationships and like how they started, how they kind of operated, and then how they ended, how they all shaped the lens through which I viewed relationships. And so it's a healing thing. Like there's a common phrase out there, many may have heard it, but it's, if you don't heal your wounds, you'll bleed on those who didn't cut you. And I see that happen so often. It's like, if you don't stop and really, okay, like here's a great example. Like, so students that come through my Healing from Heartbreak program, there's an entire module dedicated to the relationship inventory. And for the most part, I'd say on average, most people will have 3 to 5 significant relationships that can produce quality data. And then we go deep. It's like, okay, how did you meet? It's a 14 question process that you'll do on each relationship. And what'll happen is all of a sudden it'll start to pop into focus. You'll zoom out. We'll get all the data up on the whiteboard, so to speak. And then you're like, holy shit, that's it. And that is such a key piece, because if we can start to go, okay, well, this is historically the type of person I am attracted to and go after, and this is how I operate in the early phases of dating and courtship, and here's how I formulate commitments and agreements, and when I do. For example, like when do things become sexual? If there's cohabitation, when does that happen? All these things. And like I said, when I get this stuff up on the kind of the metaphorical whiteboard, the jaw-dropping moment of clarity is priceless for me as their guide, and then even more so for them as the student, because that nugget I know is going to carry them across the finish line. And they will, for once in their life, they'll stop playing that tape, because it's undeniable at that point. They're like, oh my God, well, it's almost like they're stuttering, like, especially if it's somebody like in their late 20s or early 30s or mid 40s that I'm working with. And then there's I'll pause here and I'll say this, then I have to catch them, because frequently they'll fall into a little bit of remorse, like, oh my God, like what would my life have been like had I had this knowledge earlier? And I'll have to catch them and remind them, hey, it takes what it takes. This is all solid gold. You're going to use this moving forward to
Mhm.
catapult you into the type of relationship you've always wanted. This is
Mhm.
not the time for any type of grief or shame. It's, you know, you
Mm.
are where you are. Now we move forward.
So when you're able to help them identify and they can see that, I know for me, I was always like, well, yeah, I mean, they said I went for the unavailable man. I thought, well, this is just who I'm attracted to. And these guys told me that, I went through my one available man, then the next one, and I shortened the time that I gave them and started to move on. But I always felt like, but then on the other side, there was this nice guy that I was never willing to commit to or attracted to. And there was
Uh-huh.
never, I always felt like I was either going to have to settle or go for something that was never going to work.
Yeah.
So how are you able to shift people when they see that clarity to go, oh, is it just as simple as the lens they're looking through?
I think so. So it's, and again, like for example, in my Dating on Purpose program, I have
Mhm.
an entire module dedicated to type. And a lot of people are very unconscious. I was as well, very unconscious about my type. But when I looked at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going after the same type of person again and again and again,
Mhm.
with miserable results.
Mhm.
Then through some active exercises, I was able to really distill
Mhm.
what my, let me pause here for a second. So this has been my discovery is with a lot of people, myself included, their ego will take their body places that the soul doesn't want to go. The ego will lead people into relationships.
Okay.
And, some of this could be, you could even touch on like the work from Harville Hendricks. He talks a lot about imago therapy, where people will unconsciously recreate wounded relationships from their past in order to heal them.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like it's this perpetual cycle, and here's why: because it feels normal. It
Yeah.
feels natural. That doesn't mean it's healthy. It just means it's
Right.
what you're used to.
Right.
So here's one thing I want to share. A quick story is like when I met my wife. Um, I think we've been dating for like 2 or 3 months, and I grabbed breakfast with one of my mentors, and he's like, "Hey man, so like, what's new? How are things going?" I'm like, dude, things are going really, really well. And I said, I met this girl. It's like, gosh, she's this and she's that, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, and he could tell that I was confused, but in a good way.
Right.
And he said something to me. He's like, Scott, he's like, okay. I was saying all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, it's not what you're used to, is it? And that phrase stopped me dead in my tracks, and I was like, "Holy cow! That's it. It's so damn healthy that it feels weird."
Yeah.
And that's kind of the hump that
Yeah.
I get people over. Like, yeah, it just because it's not what you're used to doesn't mean it's not the best damn thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah. I love that. That's probably as close to the just you just know because you're like it feels so comfortable and I know so many people that they're so confused when it just is so not easy, but if it works. And it's almost like they have to create the drama or something. And I'm like, no,
Exactly.
you don't have to do that. And I love what you were saying before. It's almost like I love what you said about the ego taking us places that we don't want to go because the ego is very dangerous, which I've totally realized. And that almost answers why we're just attracted to these people, but we don't need to succumb to just being automatically attracted to people that never work out. And we don't have to then go, oh, well, I guess it's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Almost like we need to shut off that autopilot, step back and grab the steering wheel ourselves and realize that we're going to have tendencies based on our history and all this
Yeah.
stuff, but we can change that. And I think that's so empowering.
We can totally change it. It's these are all software programs that can be deciphered and rewritten.
Mhm.
Um, kind of piggybacking on what you just shared is
Yeah.
like I think a lot of people they they unconsciously repeat what they're attracted to in the dating field instead of consciously choosing what they're going to be attracted to. And that's kind of the gist of this process is like I basically rewired my brain and I'm like, no, no, no. I'm not going to be attracted to this type
Mhm.
any longer because
Mhm.
it's a form of self-sabotage. It keeps me
Mhm.
on this treadmill for a long time. I'm going to consciously choose to be attracted to health, integrity, um, kindness. patience. And I found all of that in my wife. I want to share something with you real quick.
Yeah.
This was something like that I would encourage anyone listening to check this out. But and not to get religious with people, but
Mhm.
I think there is a lot of wisdom in the Bible that we can glean. And there's this one passage, so Galatians 5:22, but it talks about the fruits of the Spirit. And it just lists these words, these beautiful words like gentleness and kindness and patience. Well, anyway, years ago, I was in this church. I was actually there attending an AA meeting because at the time I was involved in AA. I
Mhm.
was using that program as a tool for personal development,
Mhm.
which I know we don't have time to go into that, but
Oh,
that's a
yeah. Whole nother summit.
whole other sub journey. But I saw this in this church. I saw this sign that these kids had made. You know how kids are, fourth
Mhm.
graders or whatever. It's all like construction paper that's been cut out in all these beautiful letters. But it said the fruits of the Spirit, and it listed them all out. And I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, I've never had that, and I desperately want that.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that was just a powerful turning point. So I would really encourage people to maybe you of course you could just rely on that scripture, the fruits of the Spirit, or you could maybe come up with your own blueprint
Yeah.
of deep inner qualities, not surface, not external qualities, but deep
Mm.
inner qualities that perhaps you've never had, you've never experienced, but that your soul has always craved.
Oh,
You,
wow. I
you
love that.
find that you're good.
You're good. Yeah, I love that. I actually had to, I don't know where I heard it, but someone said to me once, they go, and this is, I think, in terms of words, they said, if it's not nurturing, it's abuse.
Amen.
And I actually had to apply that to myself. So the minute I found myself putting myself down, being too hard on myself, not giving myself a break, I was just skiing the other week and I fell down twice and I was getting really angry at myself and I could, my aura and my vibe just changed. And then therefore I
Hmm.
wasn't showing up as an amazing person. But it's amazing how I without these tools now, I could have almost wallowed in it for a while. I almost thought that would have been a good thing to be this is the only way you have to learn. And I think that's what I did when I was young, because I'm like,
Mm,
I got to be better from it. But a lot of my own self-talk, I had to realize if it's not nurturing, it's abuse. So why would I be abusing myself? Same
hmm.
thing with your partner. If you start to just make jabs and be really punchy versus just asking questions and being soft, it's actually abuse as well. So
Hmm.
they're going to come at you the same way. So yeah, I love what you're saying about how the words make such a difference. And I think you kind of nailed it on the head earlier when we were talking about changing that lens. And that's where we always say, when I say that you can find the secret to finding love, and it's almost that simple, and it can be that quick. If you can literally just change the lens you're looking through in
Hmm.
terms of what you're looking for, how you're looking at yourself, what can come from yourself, you know, I think it's just a game changer.
100%.
It's absolutely fascinating that we're just looking, we always say looking through one pair of goggles and then another color, and all of a sudden it's like anything, perspective is everything, right?
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's everything starts with awareness,
Mm,
self-awareness, other awareness, and just awareness of
yeah.
how humans interact, how they date, how they build a courtship, and then how they hopefully co-create a beautiful marriage. That awareness piece is,
Mhm.
is job one. And then from there, it's all about just tools, skills, perspective, and then just being patient with the process.
So looking back, so I still find your story absolutely incredible. So looking back, when you were divorced at 29, and then you obviously did a lot of the work later on, was that big epiphany when you saw, oh my gosh, I can see why it went that way, um, in terms of your relationships? Like, it's kind of like, would you change anything? Or is it more like this? I know this is probably where it's led you, but were you able to just see, or even at that time, I'm almost curious, when you were 29, did that happen just because you just were like, I just don't know what else to do, and it's easier to just break up because I don't know what's happening?
You mean the divorce?
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
was, well, oh, I mean, gosh, where to start on that thing? I tried. I tried to present ideas and solutions because, it, my parents, they really did. They created a legacy marriage, and I wanted to recreate that myself. So, I mean, divorce was not part of our family.
Mhm.
My parents were married almost 62 years when they passed. So that's kind of the fiber or the cloth that I was cut from. So I'm like, when my wife at the time, back when I was 29, when she tells me that she wants a divorce and she doesn't want to do this anymore, I was like, hey, do we need to, go see a counselor? Do we need to go, go on vacation and just reconnect? Or, do we need to go maybe to speak with the pastor who married us? I mean, I was reaching for straws,
Mm,
and she really had made up her mind, and she wasn't really interested in exploring any solutions.
mhm.
And this was, like I said, back in 1998, back in Indiana.
So it was more on
And
her side, and you were caught off. You were a little bit more caught off guard.
oh yeah, I was completely blindsided, and I was like,
Okay, got
I
it.
mean, it was like an out of body experience.
Okay.
Um, and really, I reached out. I talked to an attorney. I did as much research as I could. Like, okay,
Mm,
like, like how do I save this thing? Because I did. I didn't want to get a divorce. I didn't want to. I didn't want to do any of that stuff.
yeah,
I wanted to save my marriage, but it,
yeah,
it takes two people to accomplish that. And
yeah.
she was very clear, and
Mhm,
at a certain point, I just made a decision just to stand out of her way,
mhm.
and just let her make that adult decision, and yeah.
And with those skills now, looking back on it, can you say, "Oh wow, I can see now why it went the way it did"? Is I don't know.
Completely, yeah, and God bless her. No, no, no. I wish her all the very best in
Yeah,
life and in love. But we were two young kids. I say young kids. I mean, I was 28 when we got married.
yeah.
So was she. But we, and here's the thing. Like, let's touch on this for a second. Um, there's a big difference between chronological age and spiritual age.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm just being honest. Like, I was 28 chronologically, but spiritually and emotionally, yeah, I was probably still a teenager,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how to choose a wife,
Mm,
and I sure as hell didn't know how to build a marriage. So
mm.
I was like, that's like two strikes, like, I mean,
Yeah.
so, and I don't blame her for anything. Of course, she had her part, as we all do, but I've just spent all my energy focusing on myself.
Mhm,
Where I was off, where I had missed the mark,
mhm.
where I had fallen short.
Interesting. I love that. Yeah, that we could be a certain age, and this is why I said you never know unless you've kind of taken the time to just evaluate yourself and how these relationships have gone. These are just skills that you can learn at any age and be brought up to speed, right?
You really can, and I think just bridging onto that concept of chronological versus spiritual age.
Mm,
One of my key areas of expertise is divorce and breakup recovery. And occasionally I'll bump into somebody that's like, oh, well, yeah, I went through a really bad breakup 6 years ago, or yeah, I had a traumatic divorce 5 years ago, or whatever the number is.
mhm.
But you know what? When I gently walk them into a deeper exploratory conversation, yeah, time has passed, but man, that wound is still right there.
Mm,
It is
mm,
right there.
mm.
They've been given the gift of chronological time, but since they haven't done the work around the wound, uh, the spiritual evolution has not taken place. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can, because I think we just think, again, we always say time heals everything, right? It's a common saying. So we're going to just say that it's going to feel better, but it might not. And I
Yeah.
think we're really nailing that healing thing, which is there's just no downside to it, whether it's from childhood, whether it's from a breakup, whether it's from anything. I have seen now through my own work the benefits of just healing certain areas of yourself that we
You
might
got to
just
do it.
pushing down,
You got to do
the
it.
effects
I
on
mean,
relationships.
and it affects every area of your life when you're not carrying unforgiveness or resentment or bitterness. When you unload that stuff and discard it once and for all, it shows up everywhere. You're better at your job. You're better with your friends and your family. You're able to express more of your self actualization. you're able to tap into more of you because you're not carrying that stuff. And it's why, like, you know, it's funny. I've had, business coaches tell me, "Oh, Scott, you should just focus on, one program," because I have 3 programs within my academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I fought against that. And I'm like, no, I have 3 programs for a reason, because they clearly bridge into each other. And, my main key entry point is healing from heartbreak.
Mm.
Because I know, just like, if, now don't get me wrong. I think uh, some people listening, perhaps,
Yeah.
maybe, just maybe, they don't have anything significant to work on, and God bless them. But
Mm-hmm.
that's rarely the case. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm so passionate about, like, hey, let's figure out this piece first. Let's lay the most solid foundation imaginable, so that when you make the conscious choice to re-enter the dating pool, you're
Mm.
not carrying any of that crap with you.
Yeah.
You've really and truly have a clean slate.
Mm.
And I think we would all agree, we would, kind of touching base on the golden rule, we would want our future partner to give us the gift of a clean slate. We should give them the same gift.
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, I definitely want the same
Yeah,
from my part. Like, we owe it to that person.
we
Why do
do.
they have to? And I like that's I think what was so interesting, because I definitely was bringing a lot more baggage even from other things that I was thinking. And then literally when I saw it, I literally turned to him and I went, "Oh, I am sorry. Like, wow, I've been a
Wow.
pain in the butt." I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I have not been giving you a lot of credit for a lot of things and just bringing in my old angst. But I thought,
Mm,
I love the other thing that you mentioned early on in your story, how you did seek outside, affirmations. You did seek outside, whether it was drinking, whether it was being with other people. Um, and that's what I've learned as well, is that whenever we go to seek those external, any fulfillment from the external versus from ourself, it really
yeah.
still leaves us. It almost feels like a leaky bubble. Like we're not solid.
Yeah.
And not only obviously that, and I realized that with my relationship, I felt like I was seeking validation from him that I didn't need. And once I got that from myself, I was like, oh, I took a lot of pressure off him. So it's been an interesting concept
Mm,
that whether it's drinking, whether it's working, going, throwing myself into work to forget about
sure.
it. Yeah, we can all do that. And that's just a Band-Aid, right? But once
Yeah.
you do
These,
the work, it's going to benefit you.
a million percent. And these, like you described, these are all outside solutions to inside problems. And of course, yeah, they feel good in the moment.
Totally.
It takes all of your energy and attention off of the pain that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no long-term solution there. It's an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, uh, I often share with people, I'm like, you're going to do the work eventually. I mean,
I
at
love
some
that. Yeah.
point, you're going to slam into a brick wall and you'll be forced to do the work. Hopefully, it's not on your 3rd divorce.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not on your 2nd divorce.
Right.
But everybody takes that journey eventually, that journey within. They strip away everything else, and they just they form that ultimate bond with themselves.
Wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much. How can the audience learn more about you, learn more about the Great Relationship Academy, so they know where to find you?
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it's real easy. They can just go to thegreatrelationshipacademy.com, and all sorts of ways to reach me and contact and all that jazz. Or they can just find me on social media. Just the Great Relationships, it's kind of all over the place.
Great. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been so insightful. I have loved this conversation. Even I've learned a lot, and I think I get to share my story as well, which I love. So thank you for taking the time. And yeah, definitely everyone go check him out. I love how he breaks his program into those 3 phases, the healing from heartbreak, then he has the dating on purpose, and then the strong marriage. It really is different phases, and it's all about meeting you where you're at. So thank you so much for putting that together. Here's to all the great relationships in the world, right?
Let's do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Andrea.